Hello again, Writing Workshop. So Intro 3 by NF. I wanted to choose this one intentionally because, for two reasons really. One is that hip-hop is a gigantic form of poetry, and it usually works really great for analysis as well. Hip-hop artists, whether they're Christian hip-hop artists or not, tend to use lots of poetry devices, lots of alliteration, assonance, onomatopoeia, internal rhyme, meter, figurative language. They run the gamut with all the literary devices. I intentionally chose Intro 3 by NF because there's a couple of really major poetry devices that he uses here, and there's some really interesting things going on in the dynamics of this one as well, especially of the beat that we're going to look at and connect to theme in this one as well. In our other song video for What Sarah Said by Death Cab for Cutie, it's the same thing. I provided the lyrics. I use Genius intentionally just because I know it can give some helpful grounds for analysis. On Genius, specifically, it's kind of crowdsourced, so if I click on something gray right here, like the first line right here, it kind of gives a little bit of analysis that other people have come up with. I can agree or disagree with this analysis, but it gives some ideas, right? It's setting the stage for the dynamic between NF and his fear that unfolds in front of the listener, forming a rather striking narrative that allows us, blah, 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 allowing us to see things deep within his mansion, extended metaphor, that we've never witnessed before. So on Genius, you can click on individual lines, the ones that are highlighted in gray, to see what other people think. But obviously, I want you to come up with what you think, with how you interpret any songs that you might happen to choose also. There's a lot of analysis on this one. Genius has kind of become a hotbed of activity for interpreting and understanding rap songs especially. This is no exception. So I recommend that you read through these lyrics. I also recommend that you watch this audio or listen to it as well as you read along. I don't have time within this video to listen with you, so I'm just going to jump right to analysis in a few seconds here. Alright, so let's talk themes for Intro 3. I hope you had a chance to listen to it. Really dope track. I hope you enjoyed it. I pulled two really similar themes out of this one. Maybe you can pull different ones as well. But largely this song is about fear and how we deal with our fear. You guys should know NF's background, traumatic childhood. Dad was never really in the picture. Mom, if I remember right, Mom died of a heroin overdose while he was in his teens, if I remember correctly. So went through a lot of trauma. Music is his outlet for working through that trauma. This song is a clear evidence of that. This song largely has to do with how he deals with his fear. And there's two things that I kind of notice about fear here. One thing, largely from the last lines in the song, we can control our fear rather than allowing fear to control us. This goes to those lyrics. I'll go to the very bottom there. This is the idea that, it's the last couple lines. No, it's the last two lines. Because I thought that you had me in prison this whole time, but I'm the one holding the keys. So NF realizes over the course of this song that while he thought his fear had control of him, he finds out that he was in control all along. He just had to confront it. Another possible idea with fear is that we're much freer when we deal with our fears. This one relates a little more to the beginning of the song. First couple of lines. What are you scared of? This is fear talking. What are you scared of me? That's embarrassing. If it wasn't for me, you'd have never wrote therapy. Throughout this song, fear suggests to NF that his success comes from his fear, that he needs to hold on to his fear, because his fear is why he's successful in the first place. And this song is saying, no, 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 no. We are much freer when we fight our fears, when we bury our fears, when we deal with our fears. That's when we have freedom and success, not by allowing fear to control our life. There are many devices, both poetic devices and musical devices in this song that bring out that theme. I just want to bring out, for the sake of time, the major ones that are important for showing these themes, and I'll write a couple of example thesis statements for you too. Let's start with the big one. I hope you identify that there is a ton of personification in this song right here. The big thing here is that this song is designed as a dialogue, a back and forth, between NF and his personified fear. Now, this ties in two things. One is the structure of the song. Just like how you can analyze the structure of a poem, you can analyze the structure of a song. I chose here to focus more on the personification. One of the speakers in this song, who has the same exact voice as NF, because he is NF, is his fear. His fear has taken the form of a person here and speaks from that perspective. That's probably the most important literary device in this song, and we have to analyze how that personification works to come to these themes, right? We see here that fear tries to be controlling, right? But that in the end, NF triumphs over his fear. He defeats that personified voice. He wins the argument. Other thing here too, we notice at the end of the song that NF is much more at peace, much freer once with that fear gone, and we see that in the fight, in this argument between him and his personified fear. Allusions are another piece of figurative language in this one too. Specifically, there are two things, and two different types of allusions in this song. One is to family trauma. I'll point out a line, it's early on. Fear says, crying in your room like a baby, I wish mom was here. We all do, so we wouldn't have to hear about it every single record, right? So we know that NF likes to reflect upon his mother's role in his life and his loss of his mother in his tracks, and here Fear is mocking him for that as well. So it brings up that family trauma. We see also a reference to his brother, who he had a falling out with later on as well. It's way late. NF brings it up. I wrote a song for Johnny without you, but he ain't gonna like it. Let's see how he takes it. So there's a reference once again to another traumatic family experience, the falling out with his brother too. The other type of allusion in this are references to other tracks. So this is intro 3. There's also intro 1 and intro 2. So this is NF's third album. Therapy Session is one of the, or Therapy is the album. Therapy Session is a song on the album. There's also, is this one? We saw another one too. It's Mansion. Yeah, I'm flattered you put me in Mansion, but you should have told him right? So there's references to both other albums right here. NF is using this track to start off the album Perception, which takes his career further as he continues to reflect on his own life and how, specifically his faith, he is a Christian rapper, how his faith has been his route for healing from his past traumatic experiences. The other big piece of figurative language in this is an extended metaphor. And I say extended metaphor because this is one that NF uses throughout a lot of his tracks. Whenever he refers to his house or elements of his house, in this song he mentions the basement, he mentions bedrooms, he mentions the backyard. His house is his mind, and each of these different rooms is a compartment of his mind. In this particular song, Fear has his own room in the house. Fear also gets buried in the backyard. There's even a line later on, this is after NF has buried Fear, he says, "You'll spend the rest of your life in my backyard or back of my mind, depends how you see it." So there, NF breaks the fourth wall, and he actually refers to his metaphor right there. The backyard is really the back of his mind. That's what it stands for within the metaphor. There's also metaphoric references to prison in this song as well, especially the last line. I thought you had me in prison this whole time, but I'm the one holding the keys. In the end of this song, NF is the one who has locked away his fear. He's buried it, locked it away, put it away. I had to bring this out. The last little poetry device that I would bring out here is some verbal irony. I just want to show this because I think it's the most brilliant line in the song. Whether I would use this in an essay or not, I'm not sure. But there's some really brilliant verbal irony going on right before NF actually buries his fear. There's this talk about shovels and digging, right? I want to go back up a little bit here because it really builds up to this moment. NF says, not his fear, he says, "Hey, where's my shovel at?" Fear says, "Probably out back where it always is. You can't get rid of all of me. I'm the reason why." NF says, "Now shut up. I don't want to hear another sentence." They get to arguing. Here's the argument grows in intensity. Then we get to this moment. NF says, "Let me guess. We're going to dig a hole, kill the track, and probably put a beat in it. Rap about it for like 3 minutes. Hey, that's pretty deep, isn't it?" There's some brilliant irony right there in that very moment. So he says, "Let me guess, we're going to dig a hole, kill the track." That's something that NF makes references to quite a bit in his music. Probably put a beat in it. Rap about it for like 3 minutes. Hey, that's pretty deep, isn't it? This reference to deep is what's ironic here. It's ironic in the sense that it's verbal irony. On one hand, it means that what Fear is predicting right here is pretty deep. He says, "Look, I can predict exactly what you're going to do with this track, right? We're going to dig a hole, we're going to use the shovel, we'll dig a hole, we'll kill a track, we'll put a beat in it, we'll rap for 3 minutes, we'll be good, we'll make our money," right? Deep here also means the depth of the hole that NF is figuratively digging in this song to bury his very fear. So when Fear says, "Hey, that's pretty deep, isn't it?" he's meaning two things. One is that his prediction is right. The other thing is that he is about to get buried into the ground. He's saying, "Look, isn't that hole that you're digging kind of deep?" And then later on he says, "Wait a minute, you don't think for a second that you're putting me in this, right?" And then of course NF strikes his fear with the shovel, buries him, kills him, buries him in the ground, right? That verbal irony right there is kind of That verbal irony right there is about as deep as NF goes. It's really, really brilliant, and it's lines like that that really make his themes pop. What I would suggest is the bridge between the poetry and the musicality of this is meter and rhyme. Obviously, this is rap. It's decently fast-paced rap as well. So there's lots and lots of internal and end rhyme that pushes the tempo of this track. So from a poetic standpoint, this is written in such a way that it's meant to be rapped fast. And obviously he executes that with his voice too. This ties in really well with the song's intense tone. So things like meter and rhyme and tempo and assonance and alliteration, a lot of how this song sounds is done intentionally to create this intense tone that needs to be there for this argument, for this conflict between NF and his fear to happen. Speaking of musicality, there are two big things that I noticed. Again, there's probably more going on musically that brings out the themes, but there's two big things I want to mention here. What I think the coolest one is dynamics. So I'm going to show this in the video here a little bit, but what you'll notice here is that the beat starts off light, it crescendos. Musical term, crescendo means to grow in intensity and volume. It layers in more instruments as it crescendos, so it gets louder, gets more intense as the argument intensifies. You'll notice at around the 2:30 mark it hits peak intensity, and then it decrescendos after fear is buried. Again, those are intentional musical decisions that are placed in there to develop that theme of defeating our fear, of dealing with fear. Notice how the dynamics follow that argument and fear's defeat in this song. The other thing that we'll want to listen for is NF's vocal style. So this is an argument. It is a dialogue, and as an argument, it's gonna show different ranges of human emotion. NF does intentionally display different emotions in his voices. You can hear anger, you can hear sadness, you can hear anxiety, you can hear strength, you can hear confidence, you can hear peace in the end. He especially differentiates between fear's voice and his own. I'll try to point out both dynamics and vocal style at a couple of points in this song as we watch here, and then we'll get to thesis writing. So notice really light, really quiet intro. There's going to be a quiet piano riff right here.
What, are you scared of me?
Notice even in those first few lines, Fear's voice right there, it's practically a whisper. He's not angry or anything. Starting off in kind of this conversational whisper kind of tone.
I've been here for you, but I come in never there for me. It's a little bit twisted, but I pack our bags and go back.
Notice I skipped like 20 seconds there. Grows in into.
Yeah, it's time for the third record, and you know I got the content.
Notice that instrumentation was still about the same until I get to about, I think it's maybe a minute 20, something like that.
Told you everything was okay.
You can hear the strings starting to get layered in there. So there's piano first. As this argument intensifies, they're going to layer in more instruments to give it a louder dynamic too. You're going to hear strings next, and then I gotta look. Strings next, and then you're going to hear choral chants, choral shouts as well. It's going to hit peak intensity around 2:30. That's about when NF is burying his fear.
Like I ain't never been a part of it, I ain't the heart of it, I made this whole thing. Yeah, put us on the dope stage. You must have no brain. What's the point that it is? If you didn't want me to live in your house, you shouldn't have let me move in. It's comfortable here and I like it. I got my own room and everything. It don't get better than this. Say you wanna own your life, then wake up and take your own advice. You're just mad cause you know I'm right. Yeah, I'm flattered you put me in mansion, but you should have told him right. Put your hands on the coldest nights. You didn't tell him about the times you and I used to hold the mic. I mean, what are you out of your mind? Guess both of us will be. Come on, let's go outside. Is this what you wanted?
So 2-minute mark, notice right there, NF kind of bursts into this argument with this, is this what you wanted? There's this anger that's rising in his voice right there. You can also hear those choral shouts starting right here. I'm actually going to let this play for 30 seconds. Listen to how these choral shouts intensify, how the strings intensify. They'll hit about peak intensity around 2:30 or 2:40.
I know that you're mad, but I'm not in the mood for this. We gotta work at the trial. So why you acting like I'm not a part of it? Hey, where's my shovel at? Probably out back where it always is. You can't get rid of all of it. I'm the reason why. Shut up, I don't want to hear another sentence. Hey, man, that is it me or the fear talking? What a dumb question. Yes, real music to the day we die, right? Yeah, ain't that the slogan, Nathan? Thought I told you to keep your mouth shut. I mean, so what? You know I never listen. Let me guess. We gon' dig a hole, kill a track, and probably put a beat in it. Rap about it for like 3 minutes.
You guys notice that the choral chants changed a key right there? They jumped up about an octave higher right there. It's intentional.
Hey, that's pretty deep, isn't it? Wait a minute, you don't really think for a second that you're putting me in this? No, of course not. Just a little deeper, then we'll go inside and we can stop digging. Whew. You got me scared.
Notice, beat dropped down there for a moment. Fear is about to get buried, and then listen to how this song decrescendos.
For a second, I thought we were digging my grave. We did. What, you don't like being afraid? It's a dose of your own medicine. What, you don't like how it tastes? My therapist told me don't bury my issues, but I'm gonna be honest, man, I'm feeling great.
Once again, vocal tone as well, vocal style. Notice, again, new emotions that NF is feeling here. He's just buried his fear. Now he's feeling great. You can hear that positivity. I'm going to jump forward a little bit. You can hear how this song decrescendos. 3, 4.
At you. This is crazy to me, because I thought you had me in prison this whole time, but I'm the one holding the keys.
Ends off on soft notes. So it started off soft, intensified big time, and then decrescendoed to the end as well. Notice that the tone of the song follows. Starts off light, intensifies, tempers flare, there's anger, there's anxiety, there's all these things. After fear gets buried, then there's peace in NF's life as well. So notice how those things are intentionally built in together there in this song. Let's get some thesis statements written right here. I want to look back at my theme, so I'll maybe write one for each theme. On these thesis statements, I'm going to try to mix musicality and poetry in both of them. So for controlling our fear rather than allowing fear to control us, I'm definitely going to talk about personification, but I'm also going to talk about dynamics. So I'm just going to copy paste this for now. I'm going to make sure I got this. We can control our fear rather than allowing fear to control us. Here's an idea. NF structures intro 3 as an argument with his personified. As they argue the song's dynamics. As they argue the song's dynamics denote how he... Let's see, NF structures intro 3 as an argument with his personified fear. As they argue the song's dynamics denote how he learns to control his fear. Yeah, right there. So again, this one is a blend of poetry and musical elements as well. Largely going to be talking about personification in this one. Why is it important that fear is personified in these lyrics? But then we're also talking about the musicality of it all, specifically dynamics in that second one. Let's see if I can get one for Thesis 2. Now I want to use a different theme for this one. Now it is, we are much freer when we deal with our fears. On this one I need to identify the idea that fear tries to convince NF that he's the reason behind his success. The theme of intro 3 is that people are much freer without their fears. And what devices do I want to talk about right here? I used personification in the other one. I think I am going to talk about illusions in this one. So I think for this one, I'm actually going to use 2 poetry devices here. I want to discuss illusions, but I also want to discuss extended metaphor. So I want to keep this one largely focused on figurative language. The theme of intro 3 is that people are much freer without their fears. NF's use of figurative language, especially illusions and extended metaphor, illustrates his winning battle against his fear. There we go. Sorry if there are some funny skips in there. I had to do a little bit of thinking on how to structure these thesis statements. But again, I hope this is helpful for you, especially if you are planning to analyze the song.